Hello and welcome to the Messed Up to Setups podcast. I'm Michael Halcomb, and today I'm really thrilled to have comedian Ian Shippen here with me. Ian, it's good to see you, man. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you. Welcome to my studio apartment, I guess. Smack dab in Waikiki. You can see my stuff in the background, but yeah, don't mind that.
Everything seems so messed up, but it's just our setup.
Waikiki's hopping today, I hear. Are they having like a tournament and a festival down there or something?
They have a festival every week, and it really messes up the traffic and stuff. You know, when you're just trying to do things, they'll shut down Kalakaua and just say good luck. The government. Yeah.
Oh. So yeah, we're both here in Hawaii, and were you born and raised here in Hawaii?
Yep, I was born and raised in Hawaii. Graduated from Pearl City High School. Yeah, and then I actually started comedy on the mainland. I went to the mainland for school and for work, and I started in Virginia, Newport News area. And I was always interested in comedy, but I never knew, growing up, that you could actually do it. Like, I would always watch those Comedy Central specials and then not click that you could actually eventually go on stage yourself and give it a shot, and
Yes, exactly. I'm very much in the same boat. I'm working on a project where I talk about that. And I went to a public high school in Kentucky. I had no idea that comedy was even a possibility. Like if I had gone to my high school guidance counselor and said I wanted to be a stand-up comedian, like I would have been laughed out of the room, right? Nobody would have taken that serious.
Oh no, yeah, I'm an accountant by day, and that's exactly what the those tests that you took in high school told me that I should do, is be an. But it's I'm a square by day, and then by night I just goof off with you all, and the and stuff. And
I honestly had never even heard about these schools for these art schools, for the gifted, gifted and talented or something like that. I always thought that was for the special kids, the non-academic kids or the kids who struggled. And then, these schools for performing arts kind of thing,
they should have.
No, I was just saying, I didn't learn about that till later in life. I lived out in the country in Kentucky. I had no idea that there was even such a thing.
Yeah, they should have schools for everything, because certain things aren't everything. I happen to be academically inclined, but when I lived in Virginia, my best friend went to a trade school and built showers, and he's a millionaire, and I'm just. And a studio apartment over here.
Well, you could probably sell a 1 or 2 room apartment in Waikiki for close to $1 million. You could
pretty convenient. I live here. I work in Waikiki at a hotel doing accounting for them, and then all of our shows are kind of in the area here too.
Right. You grew up here. You went to Virginia for school, so college, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
And so tell me about how did you get introduced to stand-up comedy? Where did that come into the picture?
So I lived right next to my home comedy club in Newport News, Virginia. It's the oldest comedy club in Virginia. They like to say it that way, but it's a place called Kazi's Comedy Club. And I used to go there. So I'm like a sober person now, but I used to kind of drink a lot and all that stuff. And I used to go there and I used to get drunk, and all of the comics would go up on stage, and I would just be in the back of the room I'm funnier than this, and then I was just saying I could do better, and then I went up on stage drunk once and I bombed so hard and kind of got my comeuppance there, but I got the bug and just kept going to the open mics in that one comedy club, and eventually I became a regular host for their weekend shows there, kind of how I got started. And then I did that for about a year. And then my girlfriend at the time absolutely hated that life. This was back in 2014. So she basically said, it's either me or comedy. And I chose her. So I stopped for 3 years. Wow. And then, I didn't pick it back up until about 2017, 2018, when we ended up breaking up. And by that time, I was kind of a drunken mess. We all go through our own little journeys and stuff like that. But eventually I moved back to Hawaii in 2018. And when I first entered the Hawaii comedy scene, I was kind of a slop. I was just drunk all the time, whatever. And I ended up quitting alcohol in 2019. And that's when I feel like I actually started comedy. I was a sober person. I had to read how to get up on stage, get over nerves and all that stuff. You know, I used to use alcohol as a way to get up on stage and, you know, to be brave, but I had to relearn that in 2019. So that's actually where I feel I officially started here in 19.
Was the alcohol, was that like, was it calming you down before you went up? Was it, you know, like what was the effect that alcohol was having on you other than like, you know, you bombing, but like in your mind, what were you thinking that it was doing for you?
Well, I'm actually a naturally like introverted person, you know, and just to be able to get up on stage used to be a chore to just mentally prepare myself and stuff. So I would like take a few shots before going up on stage. But then, you know, if you're performing 5-6 times a week, or not even performing, going to open mics and stuff like that 5-6 times a week, that's 5 or 6 nights that you're getting drunk in order to get up on stage. And I just couldn't live that and ended up quitting and been off the sauce ever since. Have a bunch of jokes about it too.
So obviously then it's made a difference, right? So, all right, let me ask this. So you invest your time in writing, right? Before going up on stage. I assume you were investing your time in writing, and then you were sort of using the alcohol for a little bit to, I don't know, work up the courage, the liquid courage, I guess, to get up there. And were the jokes just not coming out then how you had intended when you wrote them?
No, great on stage drunk.
They were great.
That's my personal life that suffered because, you know, I was on feature shows, and this one time I was on a feature show and I did a set or a joke, and then I did the same joke again, not realizing it because I was drunk on stage. You know? But I mean, there's, you know, it was more probably because of the breakup and stuff like that. You know, it had nothing to do with comedy. I was an alcoholic. And, you know, just couldn't live that kind of way anymore. And when I decided to quit drinking, actually, everybody in the scene was very supportive, despite the fact that we're surrounded by, you know, people that are... Comedy draws a certain kind of person. It draws people that are very compulsive. And, you know, a lot of comics, you know, have their compulsions in different things, some drinking and some in other things. And, you know, we have to aim it towards going on stage. That should be our compulsion.
Right. Yeah.
You know, it was aimed towards other things. But in 2019, when I quit, I kind of aimed it more towards going on stage and, you know, just doing comedy and stuff.
So, yeah, I agree a lot. Like, you know, as I move in like the comedy scene, there's a lot of, ways that people are taking the edge off or whatever it is before going up. Sometimes alcohol, sometimes weed or whatever.
For me, it's you know, not doing that, but some people can function. I know if I do weed right before a show, every single joke that I know will go out of my head and I will be up there like confused and stuttering and maybe not even know where I am anymore. Yeah. So yep, I always stage just stone sober now.
So I was talking to you the other night and you were mentioning to me that one of your personal sort of goals for 2025 is to write more, and then like when you're hitting mics, like open mics, to be trying to do new material all the time. So I'm curious, where are you generating material from? What are you looking for, listening for? Where do you find the inspiration to generate new material?
You know, when you sent me the info for this, I kind of sat back and thought about it. And I realized that 90% of my jokes are just things I wish I had said in a moment that, you know, something happened. You know, some witty comeback, which at the time I didn't even think of. Kind of like how like George Costanza and Seinfeld, you know, would drive away and be like, I should have said that, and then drive back about like the jerks or watch Seinfeld, right? I'm like that, you know, it's always... I'm a nice person generally, so I don't get like sassy or smart with people, but like I'm looking at my writing and it's like, oh, this really happened, but then I never said this, but I wish I said it. And then that ends up being like the joke, I guess, you know.
Interesting. That's pretty fascinating. So like comedians, I've been obsessed with this idea of like a comedic persona, and like this has been like low-key an obsession of mine for a while. And I look at like various comedians and try to pinpoint what is the persona that they're bringing on stage. And not that it's like some concocted thing. I look at like Nate Bargatze, and to me, he's like the dumb Southerner, something like that, or Anthony Jeselnik, who's sort of the devil's advocate kind of thing. Or
he puts them in jokes, I heard too, but all of them are all fake too, all the jokes.
Right. So I'm curious, have you done much thinking about your own comedic voice or comedic persona, or has that not been something you've explored much?
I mean, I know who I am, and I don't think you could be funny on stage without knowing like who you are as a person. I am 100% a nerd. I play board games a lot. I'm a competitive board gamer when I'm not doing comedy and when I'm not at work and stuff. Like Trey, I watched a lot of anime growing up and stuff. And, I mean, I'm an accountant by day, for goodness sakes. We're very nerdy people. Just knowing who you are, and I have some office jokes and stuff, and I find that I appeal a lot towards office people, a lot towards actually military people are like me too for some reason, older people. I'm terrible in front of local crowds. Like I'm half Filipino and half white. I'm known as a jalapeno here in Hawaii, but you get me on a Blue Note stage in front of a bunch of tourists and I will kill that room. You get me in a room with a bunch of local people and I will bomb so hard that and it's just because it's not my style. It's not my,
memories of Pearl Harbor. Yeah. Oh, interesting. So you've got the persona going of like, I don't know, the nerdy office worker or something to that effect.
And my dad. Yeah, my dad is the white side of me. He's I think we're undiagnosed autistic people. Definitely. My mom is kind of the fun, more local person than, but I'm kind of a square by day. My dad was an IT person and that was his day job, and IT and accounting is kind of runs down the same personality lines.
So what does your family think about your involvement in stand-up comedy?
My dad comes to a lot of shows, only like the Blue Note when I'm on the Blue Note, which is kind of the big stage here in Hawaii. My mom, she passed away a couple of years ago, but she used to come out to shows as well. And then I went to Maui, and all of my cousins and my aunt have seen me do comedy too. They like it. They know the kind of just a kind of a side passion for me. I kind of realized that when I moved back to Hawaii, I don't plan on moving back to the mainland. So unless I become like Tumine or something here, who's like Hawaii's biggest comedian, there's no, becoming a professional in this.
Yeah. I mean, you never know. I mean, I just recently connected with you on Instagram and you've got a lot of good things going,
Yeah. If I opened for somebody here at the Blue Note and then they were like, Ian, I have to have you for the next 2 years. I need you to follow me around. I would quit my job and I would go and follow that person around, provided that they're paying for it. Yeah.
Well,
I'm a hustler, but I could never like do what needs to be done in order to make it. Like I couldn't be a road comic just living out of my car, showering at the nearest Planet Fitness that there is, and become accustomed to a certain way of life, studio apartment living. But
yeah, the road life. I mean, being here in Hawaii, right on Oahu, there isn't much of a road life. That thing's certainly real. I just watched a documentary about comedian road life recently. It's really good. It's called One Nighters. If you haven't seen it, you should watch it. It's free on YouTube, but it's really good. And here though, even just being a parent, like I find it a challenge to get out so late in the evening, right, to do comedy. Like all the clubs are relatively close here in like the Waikiki area. There's some in Kaneohe and I guess Kapolei now, but as a parent and even just as a husband, like, man, it's hard to get out to these and be out late at night,
I don't know. I have no wife and no kids, and I find it hard to get out of the house myself too. A lot of times I just have to not go home, because once I go home and turn on the television, that's it. Like I haven't turned on the TV because I told myself that I'm gonna dedicate the day to writing and stuff, but once I turn on the television, that's it. My brain just shuts down and I binge watch television shows. I still have that compulsive brain, right? So if I turn on the TV show, I'm going to watch like 8 episodes of something just nonstop. And
let me ask, like, what does your writing route look like? Are you like sort of militant about like writing daily, or you just write when you get time or when something comes to mind? How does that happen?
I want to write daily, but it just doesn't happen in the past. This is another 2025 resolution, is to sit down and write more. Because in the past, it's just been when I feel like it. And towards the last half of 2024, I never felt like it. So I'd have all these ideas that I wrote down in my phone and then just never did anything with it, work them out on stage and see if there's anything there, So I'm trying to change that in 2020, just kind of write daily, go to more mics. You have waves with comedy, love hate sort of things. Sometimes you love it and you're very passionate about it. And my girlfriend also does comedy, and it seems like whenever she's passionate about comedy, I kind of taper off into the background. And then when I'm passionate about it, she's kind of taking a break herself. And we're never passionate about it at the same time. Just comes in waves. And I got the bug in January, and I'm trying to keep the bug by getting more bookings. So right now I have like a couple of headlining spots coming up that I have to prepare for. The bigger one in June for Jose, I'll be headlining Slack Key, and I'm going to try to fill that room as best I can. But I want to make sure that the jokes that I bring on stage, at least half of them are new stuff that I wrote this year.
Right.
So kind of been my carrot this year, my dangling carrot in front of me to write more and keep that wave going.
So you mentioned, your girlfriend is a comedian too. We talked a little bit about this the other night as well. And then you just kind of were referring to it here when she's like diving in, you're kind of tapering off, and vice versa. That you also, this was really curious to me, that you guys don't really talk comedy much.
No, we really don't. I feel she's funnier than I am too. And then, she asks me questions, but it's like we have such different styles, and it's just like, I don't want to, we've given each other tags before, like to jokes and stuff, but generally we write our own. And in the past, it's usually been like right before we go on stage at open mics, we'll just jot down whatever comes to our brain and stuff. But no, when we're at home, usually we'll watch movies and stuff, and we'll be a couple while we're at home, barely write together. And personally, like, I don't usually write with other people too, because I like figuring things out on my own. Like if I have a joke that I just can't get there, I'm gonna just keep trying it out in different ways on stage until I finally get there. And it's just, I don't know if it's an ego thing maybe, but I want it to be my own, right? And
yeah, that's fascinating. So my wife isn't a comedian and would never do stand-up comedy under any circumstance. But, the poor woman, I run jokes on her constantly. And then I can be a little bit of a prick and give her grief if I don't get sort of the response, or not necessarily the laugh that I want, but just like the feedback or the engagement. So it's probably wise for you guys to.
That's the thing too, because we used to do that as well. We would run jokes past each other, and then we wouldn't get a reaction out of the other person. I'm like, I know that's funny, and I didn't get it.
That's exactly.
Why am I wasting this on you? I'm gonna take it on stage, and then laugh too. That's when I know, okay, but it's yeah, I don't know. We always just say take it on stage when
Cool.
we run a joke past the other person,
No, that's actually really good advice. Yesterday, I had a show last night. Yesterday, I was running like some current events jokes by my wife, stuff in the news, right? And got a laugh out of one out of maybe six, and took them on stage, and they all hit. So that's a great motto. Just take it on stage. Do you find? Yeah, sorry, go ahead. What were you going to say?
You're not in the environment, you're like, oh, I'm going to do this joke. I want to try out this joke. And you have to set the scene for her. Okay, so I've talked about this beforehand. I'm going to eventually, I did these and I did these jokes. And then here, I'm going to throw this one in here. So get ready. And then, it's just, I don't know. There's so much setting the scene and stuff in order to run something past somebody.
Right. Do you find that getting on stage and trying to work out a joke on stage, like, is actually a part of like working out the joke for you? Like, what kind of feedback do you get from like audiences or maybe even other comedians? I don't know, that after you tell a joke that tells you need to go back and tweak it, or obviously like if you get laughs, okay, something worked. If you don't, something didn't work. But what do you do with that sort of feedback when you go back to the drawing board?
Well, the first thing I have to do though is I still get anxiety like crazy when I go on stage. So, I've been doing it for years, but I am nervous every single time that I'm up there. So when I first tell a joke, it's just to get it out into the universe. I'll just do it to say it on stage and get it out there. And then from there, after that, then I'll go back and do the same joke again, maybe pause a little bit more, let it breathe a little bit. And then from there, based on the audience's reaction or how I feel just personally about the joke, I can kind of tell whether or not there's something there. There's been times that I've done a joke for the first time, like in a feature show or something, and it just hit. Just because I knew that it was going to do well and just put confidence into it. I really don't know what I'm looking for, but mainly when I try out a joke and go onto an open mic, if I'm saying the joke, I usually know that there's something there, but I just have to get through it a few times without stuttering, because I'm my own worst enemy when I'm on stage. When I first try out a joke, I'll stutter, I'll mess it up a few times, so I'm just trying to get through saying it in front of people as much as possible. And then eventually, since if I'm trying it out on stage, I know there's something there. So eventually I just got to get over my nerves and get the wording right and get the pacing right.
So it's interesting, you're touching on it here and then the previous conversation about you want to get that wording perfect. If you're on stage and you miss a word or change a word, are you psyched out in your own head? What happens there?
Nope. I just move on to the next joke that I thought and get back to it another time. There's always going to be like another mic or something, and when I'm trying out new jokes, I'll always mess it up the first 5 or 6 times, but eventually it'll get right. And I have confidence in that. The things I thought of went through other people kind of relate to as well. And, just hope for the best. And eventually, usually it turns out for the better that it works.
Yeah. One of the things that stopped me for a long time from getting on the comedy stage, despite I've been doing public speaking for 20 plus years, right? So I don't really have much nerves before I go on stage. Now, the first couple times I did. I don't really have much nerves getting on stage, but the one thing that kept me from it for a while was the fear of bombing, right? And now I think what's helped me out a lot is just there's no fear of that. Okay. It's really not kind of the end of the world that in my head, I thought it would be, and it can be a great learning experience in so many ways. Yeah. I'm curious, how did you overcome the fear of bombing or, maybe not entire set or whatever, but just a joke? How'd you overcome that?
I don't know. It's just, I always still have a fear of bombing. Not at open mics though, because I feel that there's no way to bomb at an open mic. You're trying out new stuff all the time. 90% of the room is other comics that are going through exactly what you are. They're trying out jokes and you're not going to bomb in front of your friends. They're all your friends. They're the most supportive people. At least we're in a very supportive scene. I've been in another scene where it wasn't as supportive, but if a joke doesn't land, nobody's going to be like, oh, that sucks. You're terrible, and stuff. And now you're just going to go back to the drawing board because everybody else at the open mic is on this, there too, just trying out their stuff and just getting the words out there. The reason that I'm trying to hit the mics more and do new jokes and work out new jokes is because I actually rarely bomb, because a lot of the jokes that I do at feature shows and when I kind of headline sometimes is all jokes that are tried and true that I've been doing for a long time, so I'm trying to just get some of those newer jokes in, get those reps in right now. And audiences are pretty forgiving if you think about it. None of them are going to go up on stage and public speak in front of everybody. So if a joke doesn't land, which every time you do a set, something's not going to land, but nobody's going to look at you and be like, oh, this guy sucks. A lot of times they're just surprised that you're on stage in the first place, or you already have automatic props just for getting up on that stage.
Right.
So
that's well said. Yeah, very well said. So what I want to do here is we're going to wrap up this episode and, Ian, thanks for sharing your comedy journey and giving us some insight into like what goes on and, your writing process. And we're going to do a second episode. And so for those of you watching or listening to this one, make sure that you stay tuned and follow the podcast. In the second episode, we are going to have Ian share a joke that he's come up with. And then we're also going to come up with some jokes on the spot, or at least try to. I always have fun doing that.
It's all messed up. Yeah, everything's messed up. We're going from this mess up to the next setup. Everything seems so messed up, but it's just our setup.